Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
The eye of a stone lion gazing across 1,000 years. The rise and fall of a great dynasty. The lives and times of a rich and very liberal society. And its decline. Silence. The intrusion of the forest. And its rediscovery by the people of the world. The Chandela lion has seen it all, and now it waits in the once and future place.
We are in Khajuraho, in the central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. Khajuraho has its own airport. The most convenient railheads are Jhansi, 172 kilometers away, and Satna, 117 kilometers from the town. And then you can go on to Khajuraho by taxi or bus.
We drove and stopped off at Dhubela, where an interesting museum is housed in an old palace. In one of the galleries there was a very unusual sculpture of Indra, and in another some very interesting Jain figures. Images of the mother goddess predominate. All of them were found in this area. It gave us something to think about as we drove into Khajuraho.
Khajuraho today spreads over three main groups of temples. The western group is on the main road to the airport, bus stand and hotels. It also holds the most popular temples of Khajuraho. The eastern group is on the right. It holds, among others, the three Jain temples. Standing on its own to the south is Doladev. The southernmost temple, also standing alone, is the Chattarpur, closest to the airport, though off the main road.
When you check into your hotel, do familiarize yourself with the locations of these temples. Some of India's best chains have hotels in Khajuraho. Top of the market suites like this cost 2,500. For the budget conscious, this room in a state-run hotel is priced at 490 AC double.
There are two ways to appreciate Khajuraho. You can go the ooh-ah route, as if you were at a fantasy movie, enjoying it without asking any questions. Or you can hire a guide, or better still, do your own research and start unraveling the mysteries of Khajuraho for yourself.
We went out to the western group early in the morning when the sun was still gentle and we had the temples to ourselves. The Lakshman temple was built in 954 AD and it is dedicated to Lord Vishnu. This is the only temple in Khajuraho, we were told, which has its original platform undamaged. Curiously, these temples have no walls around them, as if they had some other protection. Also, their platforms raise them high above the ground as if they were proud of their beauty. And they have reason to be. The sculptures of the temples in the western group are exquisite.
met Shrikant and Gauri Pol from Bombay. They said,
Yeah, it's much more than what we had expected, basically.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
No, what we basically have heard about Khajuraho is only about the erotic sculptures.
Posture, yeah.
But there is much more to it
much
just
more
than
than
the erotic sculptures. I think the people who have worked here must have studied the human anatomy for years before they went into the venture. It is really so beautiful the way they have studied a woman's body, the way they have carved everything, each part of the body so well. It is really amazing.
we began to look at the sculptures from her point of view.
Women, however, are not the only subjects depicted in graphic detail. The everyday life of the people has also been captured by those ancient, anonymous artists. Here, an architect uses a blackboard to teach his pupils. The good life, taking pleasure in the grace of living, was clearly an important activity. There are many depictions of dance and music in Khajuraho.
This tradition continues to thrive in this land. Maestro Alauddin Khan, father of Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, started the Mahar Badya Brinda. His objective was both to bring out the purity of the ragas as well as to orchestrate folk music. The maestro even invented instruments like the nal tarang, made of braided pipes. Also the sitar banjo. The result is fusion music of universal appeal.
With the music still ringing in our ears, we return to the temple and let the images flow through our minds, seeking to distill their essence. It became fairly obvious now. These temples clearly showed that the enjoyment of life and its embellishment was a virtue well worth seeking in its own right. A sprightly young woman even tugged the beard of a renunciate as if to tease him for giving up the joy of living. We might not agree with their philosophy, but then probably they wouldn't have agreed with ours.
We asked ourselves, who were these Chandelas, the builders of these daring temples? They were clearly a people of a forest tribal origin. The dress of their hero slaying a lion does not depict him as a prince, but as an ordinary huntsman. Their claims of lunar origin were probably a status-enhancing device.
We do know that they were a martial people. There are a number of friezes depicting warlike activities. In fact, we know that they helped fight the battles of their overlords, the Pratiharas. And then they raised the banner of independence.
The Pratiharas were devotees of the Aryan deity, the Aditya Lord Vishnu. The Lakshmana temple, built just as the Chandelas were throwing off the Pratihara yoke, was dedicated to the Vaishnav faith of their former overlords. But many of the temples to Lord Vishnu were, in fact, dedicated to his pre-human incarnations.
In the shrine in front of the Lakshman temple stands this beautiful Varaha, the boar incarnation of Lord Vishnu. It is decorated with 674 smaller figures. These are of gods, goddesses, and celestial beings. One interpretation could be that worship of the more sophisticated deities evolved out of devotion to the more primitive ones, new beliefs arising out of the old.
This temple, dedicated to the fifth incarnation of Lord Vishnu, the proto-human dwarf Vamana, elaborates on this theme. Here, in this temple in the eastern group, there is also a depiction of Lord Shiva and his consort Parvati.
We returned to the western group and the most impressive temple in Khajuraho, Gandarya Mahadev. It places Lord Shiva visually in the towering peaks of the Himalayas. Were the Chandelas, in the enthusiasm of their new independence, rediscovering the roots of their old mountain and forest religion? What was their original creed? To whom was their first temple dedicated?
Within sight of the western group, but accessible by a rather badly kept road, is a hillock. Its crest is surrounded by a wall. Inside, facing an open square, are a series of cells. This is a Yogini temple of the mother goddess, which deifies the creative urge. This was the first temple in Khajuraho. If the Chandelas were, originally, worshippers of the fertility cult of the mother goddesses, they would wish to assert their old faith in their new, sophisticated temples. That is exactly what they did.
Women were given pride of place. Shiva, the male aspect of the Shiva-Shakti duo, was worshipped. Shiva and Shakti are a religious celebration of the joy of living.
In the Jain temples of the eastern group, we found further expressions of this unashamed joy. There were only a few images of renunciation.
Sadly, by the 12th century, the Chandela civilization was declining fast. The Chattarpur temple belongs to that period. The so-called Dakshinamurti, the southern-facing image, faces west. A local guide told us that in one image, the sculptor had combined the crown of Shiva, the face of Buddha, the body of Vishnu, and the stance of Krishna. If this is true, then this serene idol integrates many faiths. Nevertheless, its temple is almost austere compared with the others in Khajuraho. After Chattarpur, Khajuraho slept for 1,000 years. The forest moved in.
Early one morning, a little after dawn, we drove 32 kilometers into the Panna National Park. Across the river, a lonely monument stood at the edge of the jungle, as all Khajuraho had once stood. In spate, during the monsoon, the Ken River had risen so high that it had uprooted a tree and wedged it in the fork of another. The river has been flooding for many centuries, laying down silt. Ancient deposits of silt had been petrified as slate beds.
The grass was as tawny as a lion's pelt, sharp with thorn trees and summer heat. A nilgai, largest of our antelopes, drifted through it belly deep in rustling gold. He was suspicious of us.
Peacocks, however, carried their extravagant tails with finicky care. And then the antelope took to its swift heels through the sere grass and thorn forest. A red-wattled king vulture flapped away.
Our beautiful spotted deer, Cheethal, filtered through the trees, wary but not scared. Roads, however, must be bounded across. Cheethal are the favourite deer of our poets and painters because they often graze near fields and rivers. Cheethal stags, hinds and fawns form seemingly stable families. They are possibly our most beautiful deer.
Langur sat up, looking at the cheetah. One leapt down and loped away, disturbing a did-you-do-it, the chowkidar of the jungle.
The did-you-do-it's alarm probably alerted the shy chinkara, our Indian gazelle. They normally graze at night, so they could have been sleeping when they heard the alarm.
Nilgai appeared again through ash-grey trees. They are creatures of the open plains and scrublands and can do without water for long periods. They stood still, vanished.
Panna was dry when we visited it in the heat of summer. Even this huge seasonal waterfall was only a dry, frowning cliff waiting for rain.
The Panda Falls, however, were green and cool and inviting. We drove out of the Panna National Park, back along the road and a little off it. We were caught in the spell of the falls. So we're another couple. For a long while we were wrapped in the music of falling water and birds. Years ago we had seen a saffron-clad ascetic living in one of these single-celled chambers. Now the forest and the water had almost claimed these for themselves.
This reservoir is very old and not far from Khajuraho. A road leads from it to the old Rajgarh, a palace halfway up a wooded hill. On both sides of the road leading to the palace were ruined buildings, traders' mansions, possibly. Rajgarh Palace, we were told by a local resident who took us around, had last belonged to the Bundelas, who took it from the Gonds. The Gonds, in turn, had captured it from the weak Chandelas. We walked around the palace and then looked down. Battlements, reservoirs, causeways and fields spread. Suddenly we knew why Khajuraho's temples had been built on high platforms and why all secular buildings, the Chandelas, had been concentrated on this hill.
Once, the whole of Khajuraho had spread over marshy, low-lying ground, waterlogged in the monsoon. Out of these floodplains, rocky islands had risen. The temples had been built on such islands. Over time, silt had filled in the floodplains, and rich forests had hidden the old temples.
In 1955, the late Shampuda visited Khajuraho. A man of remarkable vision and determination, he badgered the powers that be and rested only when Khajuraho was placed firmly on the international tourist map.
Khajuraho woke again. Today, temple bells ring in Khajuraho's Matangeshwar temple. And in the Shantinath temple, devotees pray.
The museum is rich with the recovered heritage. It would have been discarded as rubble when the forests covered the abandoned temples.
The people of the world began to rediscover Khajuraho. Shops offer jewels and handicrafts from all over India. In her hamlet, that was revitalized after 1,000 years, Neelam Singh Chandel hopes for a bright future.
On our last night in Khajuraho, we walked out of our hotel and, for a magical moment, were ensnared again. On the far side of the night lay our encounter with the wild and the wonderful.